Hello, everybody. For today's presentation, I will be discussing social media addiction and its overall impact on cognitive development. And this is for our learning psychology social media presentation. So it's nothing new that we are all on technology daily in several different capacities. We consistently have a cell phone next to us or on us. We are on computers frequently, whether this be for our job or for our own enjoyment. Um, so this can eventually lead into unhealthy habits while on technology or an addiction to the internet, which I'm going to use the abbreviation IA for the remainder of the presentation. But how can we identify this? What encompasses an internet addiction? So, the overall feeling of restlessness, moodiness, depression, irritability when you try and cut down your media usage. I know if you have an iPhone, every week or so, you typically get a recap of how much screen time you have. I am also guilty that this is a little bit higher than what I would like. And if you attempt to cut down your usage of the internet, having these feelings of just moodiness, depression, irritability, um, yeah, it's just a really heavy feeling when you're missing your internet. Your online activity is a little bit longer than you had originally intended. Jeopardize or risk significant loss relationships if you lose your job, education, career opportunities due to the direct impact that you have on the internet. Then things like lying to family members, others, therapists, if you see one, to conceal the extent of involvement with the internet. So, for example, you're like, oh, my screen time is only this on my phone. However, you may be using a computer to help supplement that time. And then lying to family or friends saying, oh, I only use the internet for a couple of things, or I'm only on the computer this amount of time. When you try and minimize your own experience while on the internet to appease others. And then the last symptom of this is physical symptoms when you're not with technology or you're not utilizing technology. So the same thing is like the moodiness and depression. A lot of this manifests as headaches, stomach aches, overall just body fatigue when you're missing the internet. So now that we've discussed what a technology addiction or internet addiction may pertain to, we all have daily exposure to social networking sites such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, um, what have you. We are all on social media on a daily basis to feel connected to one another. In this particular study, they looked at social media addiction and satisfaction of life, as well as things like self esteem, social media usage, and the gender differences between male and female. And so I had quite a shocking discovery with this that there was no correlation between social media addiction and satisfaction of life. Um, they said that there was a zero correlation based on some surveys that they had done with about 200 participants. Um, and actually showed that there was a negative correlation that indicates self esteem and satisfaction with life. So that means as self esteem increases, satisfaction with life potentially decreases. Um, and so I found that to be quite interesting as it pertains to social networking. Um, Lower self esteem is usually correlated with more social media usage. I feel this is not anything unexpected. However, there are no gender differences that were evaluated in this particular study between having a social media addiction and satisfaction of life. So, male and female compared very comparable in the same results with this. So I found this to be quite entertaining, um, especially pertaining to the first point that there was no correlation between social media addiction and satisfaction of life. I would believe that this would impede directly on someone's satisfaction or their perspective of life. However, I can see the justification behind that as well. And then evaluating all of this and social media networks and social networking usages, I really wanted to see what it looked like across cultures, as I have only grown up in America. I've only lived in America, so I've only been influenced by American culture. And I wanted to see if this is something that other nations are potentially dealing with as well. So in this particular study, there was 32 nations that were tracked. The study was converted into 13 different languages and given out to about 32,000 different participants across the globe. And in this, really examined the culture type, whether it be collectivistic or individualistic, and their social media presentation is and why they were on social media. And so in this study, they found that there's higher addiction in collectivistic cultures. Um, this could be pertaining to a number of different reasons. This could also play into their in-group and out-group norms. So for those of people who may not know, an in-group is shown in the graphic is a group that one belongs to. So my personal in-group would be Italian culture, American cisgendered female, all of these different areas that I particularly identify as. What could be encompassed as the word us. Um, so people who are like you, people who look like you, speak like you, have similar culture. Um, this may pertain to these in-group norms, that this is the expectation. Then we also have denser and closer relationships with others, so we can continue to foster these relationships. We no longer have to go face to face with people or go out into public and have these relationships with people. You can do things from social media sites, from your cell phone, all of these different areas now just with a touch of a button. And finally, in collectivistic cultures, using social media elicits social support. So, for example, posting something on a social media site, you're able to gather people's social support, whether it be for a business, for your own emotions, for any milestones that are happening. People are able to view each other's social standing. Peer approval. So, if you are able to get into a college or a master's program, what have you, other people are able to show their approval for your milestones as well. And then this is just kind of a form consensus. So this is something that is like developmentally appropriate for adults in order to view each other. And then in individualistic cultures, a lot of these things are more internal demands. So in collectivistic cultures, we talked a lot about what the social circle is, or what um, is expected. However, individualistic is very much about me, my internal demands, my own mood modifications. This is typically because we get on social media for our own benefit, for us to evoke some sort of emotion. And so, based on the cultures, now we know that it's a cross cultural study. This particular study also examined the impact on mental health, which is something that should not come as a surprise to any of us. In this particular study, 232 students and their social media habits were measured. This showed that social media addiction was negatively associated with a student's mental health and their academics. And so, in this particular study, which this table is a short snippet of this study, we can see that they examined high self esteem and the high correlation to mental health. Then that can also be indicated by the number of asterisks that are shown here. So these all show that these are significant or statistically significant. And so from there, we have the 3 meaning the most significant, 2 meaning still significant, and then 1 being barely significant. However, these are all things that we should identify. And also in this table, we look at mental health and academic performance. This shows the high correlation here. So if we go to academic performance and one, the social media addiction, we have still a significant number, or statistically significant number. And so this is not something that comes to a shock as any of us, as we know that social media has a negative impact on our mental health. This is more of a way for us to organize these thoughts. Then going on about our technology addiction. So this is definitely an addiction if it impacts our mental health, as shown in the last slide. Just some continuation of this study. They decided to take it a step further, particularly with the students in China with an internet addiction. They were measured in an intervention program, so they participated in practices that are invoked in things like addiction counseling. So their stage 1 was a cognitive reconstruction. So this is really a reflection on social media usage. How do I feel when I'm on it? How do I feel when I'm not? Really getting these students to understand their feelings when it comes to social media and why they use social media. What is their driving force for this? And then they had their intervention stage 2, which is journaling techniques. This would be at the end of the day, students would write down how they felt, how long they were on the internet, and these are very raw numbers, so we can go back and make sure that people aren't lying about how long they were on their internet for the day. But these journaling techniques actually showed on here, or on our figure 2, their social media usage had went down. Their feelings associated with social media had actually improved. So they view it more as a luxury, no longer a necessity. And so then overall, this is just my experience with social media so far. Like I mentioned, I have found myself several times scrolling mindlessly on social media sites, whether that be TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. I tend to fall down what I call rabbit holes, and 30, 40, 50 minutes later, I look at my phone and I'm like, wow, I spent that much time watching, a short video on YouTube. But I feel all of this is a time waster. I could have been doing things more productive. But does it feel good in the moment? Yes. Does it allow me to rot on the couch? Absolutely. But there are definitely more productive ways that I could have used my time. And then when I spend an increased amount of time on social media specifically, I often feel emotionally drained. I feel as though my life is insignificant compared to the people that I consistently see on social media. Everybody has a very picture perfect life, which brings me into my next point. The impacts, or the negative impacts on my mental health while I'm on technology consistently. I work with a lot of students, especially high school seniors, so I tell them just because it's on social media does not mean that it's true, does not mean that it's accurate. I feel like I also need to start taking this to heart. I see a lot of social media influencers on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, what have you. And they talk about how their life is so perfect and, they're going on all these trips and doing all these great things. It makes me feel as though my life is insignificant, but it doesn't mean that, one, it's not. My life is still very significant, and I know that in other capacities, but it makes me feel like I'm falling behind and that they don't have struggles and I may have struggles. So really coming over that, I spend a lot of time off social media so that I'm able to recoup these feelings and so that I don't fall into this negative mental health hole that has been discussed previously. But overall, the things that really have touched upon is that internet addiction is very real in today's society. We are consistently surrounded by social media, we're consistently surrounded by technology, and everything is pertaining to technology today. So, technology has been rapidly advancing for most of my life and now continues to captivate our attention. First, it just started with having Google, then social media sites, and now we have things like TikTok and these short bursts of videos that are able to captivate our attention. And if it doesn't, we move on and we find something more gratifying. Um, as stated in the presentation, it can have detrimental impacts on your mental health, things like your academics, your self esteem. All of these areas can be impacted based on our technology usage and our consumption. And so, finally, the main part of this is that technology and social media addictions can be overcome. Um, it is similar to any other addiction, that it needs consistent work. However, there is definitely the ability to overcome a social media addiction. And I found this little graphic that talks a lot about the technology addictions. And this one actually included social media, which is one of the first one that I have personally seen, and compares it to things like online gambling, shopping, um, just gambling or gaming in general. And so I think that more people are becoming aware of this issue and how we can be directly impacted due to that. And I think that that's great. We need more exposure of technology addiction and internet addiction so that we can effectively care for these individuals. But thank you all so much for listening to my presentation and following along. I hope everybody has a great day. Goodbye.